Does anybody have a gauge on the line to the lobby guard? It feels like I noticed the fifth graders are back. They were the last ones to leave the downstairs.
It was the people watching the kids.
Yeah, not the line. Oh, okay, perfect. That makes it feel better. Um, Thanks for staying longer after our very fun book character parade. We're going to go ahead and get started. And just full disclosure, at 11 o'clock, I have a meeting. So, like, we're going to be on time. Happy Friday. This is so exciting. And I'm a little warm. I like the Harry Potter sweater, but I'm like, the first day it's like 75 here in Seattle. Um, the topic for today is talking about social emotional learning. So, as many of you know, I'm Danielle. I'm the principal here. And then joining me today is Senora May. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And when we talk about social emotional learning, not just social emotional learning, we kind of have three different levels. So we have like a universal supports, additional supports, and personalized supports. And that will be talking about like what we do at each of those levels. Before we get into those levels, just a little bit about why are we talking about social emotional learning, right? This started before the pandemic, and the pandemic, all the things that the pandemic exacerbated makes us even more crucial and paramount. Emotions affect everything that we do. There's a continually growing body of research around emotions. It helps us like with what do we pay attention to, what do we remember, what are we learning, decisions, our ability to be creative, to think critically, to solve problems, how we feel both mentally and physically, how well we form and maintain relationships, and our performance at school, at home, at the workplace. So emotions are important. And this is just a little snapshot around some brain research that when we sort of combine focus on social emotional learning, that it, in a nutshell, it helps us perform better at school, right? So we we talk about some of the different areas of the brain, right? So we've got like our brain stem, our limbic system, and our prefrontal cortex. And where we do the most like critical thinking and problem solving is in our prefrontal cortex. And where we have those responses around like fight, flight, or freeze, that's more of in our like brainstem limbic system. And then we talk about the amygdala hijack, which every human experiences, right? And that's sort of this emotional response to something that has happened, and it can trigger fight, flight, or freeze. One of the things around brain research and stress, when you're in a constantly stressful situation or in a constant state of anxiety, it makes that instead of being in a hijack, something that happens infrequently, it makes it something that you're like constantly living in. So if you're in a constant state of stress, then you're like constantly living in that fight, flight, or freeze. So that even makes social emotional learning even more important. And then we talk about emotional intelligence. It's about what we do with our emotions. It's a guide to understand the role of emotions and what information we can learn from them and how do we manage them. And we need these skills to be successful, not only at school and work, in life in general. The goal is not to feel emotions, because sometimes kids think that they should only feel happy and that the other emotions are like bad, right? And so one of the things in our curriculums that we talk about is that all emotions are valid. We experience something like 800 emotions in a day, right? It's about managing what do we do with those emotions. So when I talk with my third grader, I'm like, it's okay to get mad. It's not okay to be mean, right? And so that's that piece of emotional intelligence about being able to identify your emotions and then make more productive steps with them, right? So not always doing things out of anger that can get you in more trouble and cause even more emotional responses. So universal supports is, I have like a big list here, and it is a thing that we do for all students that are here at school. In our kindergarten through second grade level, we have a curriculum called Second Step, and it's that beginning social skills. Third through fifth grade, we focus on ruler. We'll talk more about those in next slides. We're also introducing this week, that was the Point of Spirit week, sort of launching Camp Kindness. So there is an organization I'll also talk about called Camp Kindness, and it's a former Puesta del Sol, or I should say Puesta del Sol alumni family, in connection with a couple Puesta del Sol staff members that sort of started the lessons and the focus on kindness, and it connects. It's a social emotional learning curriculum that's really focused on empathy building and how when we are kind to other people, we feel better about ourselves. When we do things that are helping our community, we feel good about that. We also have a practice here, what's called some classrooms call it morning meetings or community circles, and it's typically at the start of the day. Some of our classrooms go right to specialists, so it's after specialist, and it's an opportunity for social emotional connection and getting to know each other, and just really building a community of learners. We do the coupons, right? For when you're modeling our three, like kind of like some kids refer to them as like school rules or the big three, but it's our standards about showing respect, solving problems, and making good decisions. And then we have a unit called the Bullying Prevention Unit, and so all of our kids K-5 get that unit, along with there's also something called the Child Protection Unit. You might hear your kids talk about the never, never rules, never, never touch fire, never, never ride your bike without a helmet, We also have a practice which is built from both our ruler curriculum. It's called Restorative Conversations. And it's about understanding multiple perspectives and understanding how your actions impact others, which is a really developmentally sophisticated skill. We know from brain research, our prefrontal cortex is not fully developed to like our mid-20s. Our elementary age students are not in their mid-20s. And then it's more with our younger students, but we do reference it sometimes with our older students. It's about Kelso's choices, which is when you have teaching them to identify a small problem and a big problem. And then when you have a small problem, what are some things that you as a student can do to solve it? Talk it out, like ignore, walk away, change the activity, and when it's a big problem, the strategy is get a grown-up, So there is, and I will send all of the links in next week's newsletter. For Second Step, they have a section on family, so like being able to see some of the language that is used in our Second Step curriculum. You can switch it in English or Spanish. And they also have like things that you can do at home. So sometimes there's discussion starters like at dinner time and things like that. The thing you'll see consistent in both programs is sort of this, like, how are we encouraging people to sort of like pause in the moment and recognize their emotions and then make a decision that's going to be helpful, in a nutshell. Similar with ruler, which is the intermediate curriculum. This curriculum has been really popular, so you also see it referenced in our younger grades as well. So things like the mood meter. And one of the pieces that's powerful about the mood meter, so the mood meter is the one over here. It's sort of like your energy and your pleasantness. So how much energy do you have, and kind of like how good do you feel, right? So sometimes kids think that you should only be here, which is high energy and high pleasantness. And that would be like for the Remix Glow Party fundraiser. That would be for like recess. So we want to get a little bit maybe lower energy, but still in the good feeling. We talk about like taking tests, it's good to be in the green, right? Calm and feeling good, and then blue is getting a little bit more sadness, and red is getting into a little more like the range of like angry feelings. Right? But kind of the first step in any sort of problem solving is like recognizing it, right? So, um, and there are many mood meter check-ins that the intermediate students engage in, and it's something that you can talk about at home as well. Um, on the far end, the toast, it's called, the language I use in Ruler is called the meta moment, right? And we talk a lot about metacognition and how do we pause and think about the way we think about it. So the red arrows are something happens and then you have a feeling. So you've got to like pause and you've got to picture your best self. You got to think about the tools that you know to get to your best self, and then make a decision that's going to be helpful. So some of those tools are take a breath, breathe, count, and they teach like different, breathing strategies, counting strategies. We have in our classrooms, calm down corners, which are just little areas about, because I will think about myself as a grown up when I get frustrated. Taking a break is one strategy, and then the blueprint is about that restorative conversation. It's around understanding different perspectives, like what happened from each person's perspective and how it made them feel. What are they going to do differently next time? And what do they need to do to repair the harm that has been caused, right? And we have a reflection page for students, and it kind of models those same things. What happened? How are you feeling? How did it affect others? What are you going to do differently next time? And then how are you going to like repair or make up the situation? And then here's the link for Camp Kindness. And it's really small font. Their mission is really about empowering young people in service of their communities to make the world a better place, right? And how when we are in service of our communities that we feel really good about ourselves, and it's sort of that really positive cycle. And Camp Kindness has lessons that we're going to do here. It also has like activities for families out in the communities and quite a few resources for maybe even doing your own community family project, and then others that you can join in. So that is all of our universal that we try to do for all of the students. And then we get into a layer that we have students who need a little bit more support. And so in the additional support, there are things like lunch bunches. And lunch bunches is sort of like a group of students, usually a heterogeneous group of students. So some students who are a little bit like the peer models, right? And then some students who might be struggling to make friends, who might be new to the school. There's a variety of reasons, and having kind of that conversation in that lunchtime with an adult. Sometimes it's Jessica, myself, Maggie. There's a few other, sometimes the teachers, right? Then we also have a check-in, check-out. I'll talk about that on the next slide. The restorative conversations are a big part of that additional layer of support. Often with developing brains, like all of our kids, they just need a little bit more guidance in how do you build those empathy skills, right? And then another strategy is what we call contingent breaks. So contingent means that it is not a given break. It is, you have earned that break, right? And so in supporting maybe work completion or maybe even just task initiation, right? But like, okay, if you're here through this, like reading time, then you can take a break, at X time. But that's what contingent means. So, and then our counselor also does social groups, which is similar to a lunch bunch, but it may not be lunch. So check in, check out. It's funny, I made slides for each of these and I just rambled. It's all good. Check in, check out is where, again, our three big school expectations about showing respect, solving problems, and making good decisions. So that check in could be in the morning time, a simple like, okay, remember the big three? Okay, you got this today. High five, go. And then at the check out at the end of the day, how did it go? How'd the big three go? Right. So it's a pretty quick, simple. It's just a little extra reminder, and it also helps build the relationship. So the teacher can do the check-in, check-out. Also, Jessica, myself, Maggie, there's a variety of people who also do check-in, check-outs. Lunch bunches. Senior Maggie, do you want to add anything about lunch bunches? And if you could come over to the mic so they could hear us from further away. I'll bring you a chair.
I really don't. I think you explained it just fine.
Okay. For those at home, she was like, she didn't have anything to add. It's a lot of fun. That's what I would say. And
I guess I have one thing to add.
see, I knew she did. Yeah.
The thing I like about lunch bunches is organically things come up, right? And then I can sort of move them into the social emotional lane. For example, earlier this week, a child lost a pet. And all of a sudden we're eating and everybody's laughing. And she said, my dog died last night. And everybody just went. So we can have that conversation because at this age, a lot of the time between grandparents and pets, and unfortunately sometimes parents or caregivers, that's their first experience with death. So that's one thing I do like about lunch bunches that aren't exactly the curriculums that I'll follow. Although anytime anything organic comes up, we talk about it, but it's a little easier way to address something that's on a child's mind. And the other children get to hear about it too.
Builds lots of empathy. And then we have some friends who need even more specialized supports. So we call those personalized supports. Another word is individualized. So then when I talked about the check-in, check-out earlier, instead of the big three, show respect, solve problems, make good decisions, which can be fairly universally applied, for a student who needs more personalized support, it might be specifically what they're working on, right? So it might be keep your hands to yourself. It might be, kind words. It might be, I'm going to start the task, right? So whatever additional area or more special individualized area, that's what the check-in, check-out is. And then it could also be more frequent check-in. So instead of just, at the start of the day and the end of the day, it might be every hour. And usually as the more individualized we get, there's more of a connection with home as well. Like depending on the frequency of the check-ins, there might be a certain amount of points involved. And then if they make their day and they make their goal, then there's, they get to have boba tea in the afternoon, whatever, fun reward. There's often a break plan that includes both contingent and non-contingent breaks. So non-contingent means you get the break no matter what. So for instance, if we know that going to recess might be a trigger, then right before recess is a non-contingent break. So you come have a break, kind of bring us back to the prefrontal cortex, hopefully, then being able to engage in that potentially non-preferred task, right? When we get really individualized, we have some folks who can do what's called a functional behavioral assessment, which is fancy language for trying to figure out the function of the behavior. And then when we understand better the function of the behavior, then we try to create a behavior intervention plan. Which is very specific to when a certain behavior, when an unexpected or undesirable behavior occurs, how are we responding? And what are we doing beforehand to try to prevent the unexpected or the undesired behaviors? And it's a plan shifting from we want to mitigate the unexpected behaviors as we talk about approximating the behavior. So, the ultimate goal is we want kids to be sitting at their, wherever they are and participating appropriately in the class and maybe, doing whatever the work is, whatever the task is at hand. To go from not being able to do that to 100% to that takes a lot of steps, right? So one of the steps might be, I am where I'm supposed to be, right? So maybe not completing the task, but at least I'm approximating the behavior by being kind of where I'm supposed to be. And then we move to, well, I'm going to start the task. I'm going to put my name on the paper, and gradually continue to reintroduce like the next expected behavior to get to that point. And reshaping behavior is complex. It sounds simple, like, oh, we'll do an FBA, like a function, we'll find what the function is. The function of human behavior is not just one thing. It can be really complex. And changing behavior is hard. One of the analogies I often use is because if it was easy, I would be 30 pounds lighter. And I logically know all of the things that are like healthy for me to do, right? You know, and so, and I'm an adult, hopefully with a mostly finished prefrontal cortex, right? You know, and the other piece is when we have students experiencing dysregulation, the as you peel back the layers and dig down, it is not about defiance. It is not about trying to make the adults upset, right? There are usually really, in some cases, like heartbreaking reasons, right? And so it's also about, as a community, being able to build empathy, and as a community to feel like that we can respond together in support so that we can continue to grow and make healthy decisions, right? And we have some new folks this year in our building, and they're a little busy right now, so they're not actually here. But I can tell you about their role and what they do. So when we get into the functional behavior assessments and behavior improvement plans, a lot of what we're getting close to like special education. So you guys know Deanna Rodriguez is our special education, our resource room teacher. And then later in January, Emmy Park joined, and she's our second resource room teacher here. And then I'm moving from right to left, at least on my screen, it's that way. And then we have Erin Rodriguez, who is new. It's been about not quite a month yet, you know. And so in the role of behavior technician, she is helping support the gathering information for FBAs and input on behavior intervention plans, and then also supporting all of the staff team in implementing the intervention plans and like checking in on how's it's going, right? And then Kira Gillespie is our certified behavior specialist. So similar to a psychologist in terms of when we talk just in the realm of behavior. So she's the one who does the functional behavior assessments. So can our so can our psychologist, Seppi. And we only have the psychologist a few days a week. We share her with another building, you know. So we're really happy to have Kira's support added to our community. So she really leads the team in doing the functional behavior assessment, and then in developing behavior improvement plans. She can also think individually about a child and then holistically around the classroom environment or the school environment. What are some things? Because we believe in positive reinforcement. We believe in serving all students, right? We believe in differentiating instruction. And sometimes those beliefs get challenged, right? and so really having additional members on the team, like helping us, like, okay, how are we living our beliefs, and what does it look like, you know? And Kira also joined us about a month ago, and so you might have seen, I should have gotten pictures, but we didn't have time. She brings to us experience from clinical setting, and so lots of experience with students who have very different needs, especially around emotion regulation and behavior management. Maggie, it looked like you wanted to add something. No?
No.
Okay.
I'm okay. Are
Okay.
these positions that are historically filled just been vacant, or are they just recently been added?
They have recently been added.
Okay.
So
is that across the district or just here at Weston?
it's across. It's not every single school in the district, right? But In the past, there's been a smaller handful of certified behavior specialists that we all had to share and tap into. What we're experiencing, very similar to like every school in the country, an increase in needs for behavior supports. So they're trying to add to as many schools as possible instead of just sharing the handful across the 30, 28, I don't 28-ish schools, trying to embed them more into school communities.
And
So
in light of the budget shortfall, is this something we can count on?
I don't know. So no. Okay. I feel like in this day and age, no news is good news. So I don't have any news to share. So I'm gonna go with no news is good news.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the legislature just passed more special education funding, maybe that backfill it.
And I think that the gap between what districts receive for special education funding and what districts actually spend on special education is monumental. We're talking like tens and millions of dollars, right? And so yes, I am optimistic that what is coming in the next, it doesn't fill the gap by any means, but maybe it makes the gap a little bit smaller. And often certified behavior specialists and behavior technicians are part of special education funding. What I can say is, as a district and as a district leadership team, the focus, even in these really unsettling and very, very tight financial times, the focus has been trying to maintain support for our like highest need students and our most I don't know if this is the right word, like the students that we're most concerned about and the families we're most concerned about, and trying to keep the resources as school based as possible. And I feel like we're facing more shrinkage and cuts sort of like at a district administration level to maintain as much support as possible at the schools. And so I appreciate that. And I keep hearing about all of our neighboring districts that are experiencing similar things. Hopefully, sort of the confluence of events that got us into this situation, we're not going to have anymore.
When you say the money received for special education versus what's spent, do you mean we need more, or can you explain that?
So there are significant federal mandates mandating school districts to do X, Y, or Z when it comes to special education. So the cost of those mandates, we get some federal dollars and then we get some dollars from the state. I don't know if I have these. Yeah, I don't know if I have these numbers accurate. So I'm just going to kind of make them up as I go. So let's say for me as a special education student, the cost to provide my services are $15,000. Okay. The federal government might send us 500. The state government might send us 5,000. Then the district is picking up the 9,500, right? So it's a big gap between what it costs to provide the services than the funding sources that we get from the federal government and the state government. So yeah. And there is a piece of the cost for a student in special education that is the general education cost. Yes, but how we fund public schools is more complicated. I don't have the right degree, but yeah, there is that gap in special education funding. So yeah.
Can I add on that?
Yeah.
So I worked on advocating for more funding with the legislators this year through the Bellevue PTSA Council. Roughly, Bellevue has like a 30 million shortfall. They make that up with the local levy dollars, and so we're not trying to pit special education against other services because that's super important. But what happens is when local levy dollars are used for special education, then it takes away from other local funded things like a 7-day period in secondary or additional mental health counselors and whatnot. So the good news is, as of Sunday, when the legislature just passed, the net effect is about an extra 1.7 billion coming to Bellevue for special education, but that's not enough. So Bellevue will still be subsidizing special education fundings because the state doesn't fully fund it, but there is the mandate, and Bellevue has committed to doing what's right, which is to fully fund special education, but it comes out of $4. Does that make sense? So anybody who wants to advocate, please, let's.
Okay.
You never do enough.
Thank you. Yeah. Sure. And you got your box of surprise. Let me take this question and I'll pass it over to you.
And maybe it would make more sense to wait till after. I have a few that are just kind of related.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was just curious, like, as someone that really thinks that social emotional learning is actually some of the most core learning that can be done in school, I'm just curious, like, how much time does this kind of trickle down to being that's spent on it in the classroom, just genuinely out of curiosity?
Yeah.
Throughout a week or a day or however it's broken down.
Yeah.
Roughly.
I would say it works out to about 20, 30 minutes a day.
Okay.
Right. Give or take, different grade levels, different fun events happening, like the character, right? But I would say it's about 20 to 30 minutes a day.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then is there information on where this curriculum comes from? And
Yes.
This is newer, isn't it? This is
So
more newly implemented one?
So Second Step's been around for a very long time, but we had a recent, but I say recent, like last 5 years, like update to Second Step. But 20 years ago, I was teaching Second Step. We had like posters that we held up. Now it's, now it's on videos, right?
Maybe you know
Yeah.
more about this,
Yeah.
the legislation passing an update to specifically like the sex education, social emotional learning, and I wasn't sure like what the trickle down effect of that was at this point.
Yeah, and then Ruler, gosh, it's about 8 years. And Ruler specifically is based on the CASEL framework, which I forget what CASEL stands for. I should know that. And which is based on a lot of research out of Stanford. I mix up Stanford and Harvard. Yes. CASEL is Castle, not Princess Castle. And I would say so. Yes, we as a district we recognize the need. There's a growing body of research, and then and the pandemic just made it even more important. Yeah. So and then when I send the links, then the websites also give like here's all about us. Here's what we're based on. Yeah.
And my final question was, I know I'd asked previously just when some of the more specific sex education grades, appropriate was coming out, like, oh, can I just get more of the curriculum, not to scrutinize, but just to be able to better support these conversations at home. And it was really difficult to navigate based on the links I got. And I was just curious if there was any way to actually just provide parents the curriculum being taught at their grade level that their child's at.
Yeah, I have to say, I assumed that the links would be very helpful.
It was really hard to navigate, and then it would give you like a rough outline, but they didn't actually give you access.
Okay. Yeah, I will.
Yeah, which is a little difficult. Like I'm a counselor, so this is like what I love to do, and I just want to make sure I'm like the way I'm approaching things. I don't need to explain it in a different way if someone's already done it once, and I can jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah. Would you do me a favor, because I did not bring paper? Would you just shoot me a quick email so then I can even just connect you with like our health developer who might be able to, because we put so much of the curriculum like online for families to access. Like this should be easy. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Danielle, how do you see the PTA supporting? And because if this is like, it's really like a priority for the whole district.
Yeah.
So like, how can we support it beyond kindness?
That is a great question. So there is like everything from I know many teachers put in grants through the PTA around filling their like calm down corners with like the fidgets and stuff like that. And many teachers also did put requests for different kinds of seating, so kids who need access, it's also just much more comfortable than these stools that we're sitting on, so that is one way, like continuing like with the teacher grants as we get access to those things. And then we just, sorry, I'm looking at Joel. Like just yesterday, we're starting to think about like, maybe dreaming a little bit bigger, and so we've got a few ideas, but I would say the connections between some of the language that we use here at school, which I get bilingual English you know, and you know, then at home. But at the moment, I don't think that there's a big need for like curriculum supplements. You know, I think we've got some pretty solid core social emotional learning curriculums. So it's more about the fidgets and the tools that go with or that supplement those curriculums. So
I
see if I
guess I'm
can.
thinking more of like time, like do we need like recess clubs or like things like that can like kind of bring the kids together?
So one of the ideas that we would love to have is like in our most recent ask about recess supervision in the afternoon, not so much to supervise recess, that's what our recess teachers are, but about playing games, right? And not necessarily games that need a lot of equipment, but maybe games where kids don't touch each other. Like you get points for not touching each other, but yeah, that would definitely like coming out and like, oh, today in this part of the playground we're going to play this game, so like running games. I know at a couple other schools there's like soccer during recess, and that volunteers come in and help referee and play soccer at recess, and so yeah, coming to play with kids would be great. So
And I know.
oh yeah.
I work in a school where they do like parent recess, where parents are invited. Like it's like a monthly thing where parents, that's their day to come.
Oh, I like that idea. Maybe we have the kids be the recess teachers while the parents play. A little role reversal, modeling. They had a
We
lot.
also could use parents that want to organize grade level play dates. That's a
Oh,
great way
yeah.
for parents to start socializing and talking to each other.
Because we can socialize again. Yes.
All
Yeah.
of that is not, but we had a problem with the small group. In this beginning of the year, I had a son in IAP student, and also I'm just talking with Diana and then a couple of different counselors. He had a problem with the socializing. He just problem with the getting inside the group. How to he's one-on-one is great, but just only the 3 more kids. He had a problem. Yeah, it's a play date, is a perfect, but he doesn't want to come because he just before
It's
experience
overwhelming.
is not good because it's not involved in the big groups. And then if there is a chance, I just started getting. I'm just all the time ask. They had a because my son sit in the classroom the all recess. He just reading. He's all time alone, and then he's not getting inside any group. Maybe we can assign this 3 kids. I don't know. I'm just open to any help. I can come to here, but I'm not playing with my son because it's complicated. They just he see me, he just take away all the kids, and then he just coming to me. But I came for the other kids, and maybe the other parents came for my son, and then a couple of kids because yeah, it's everything is great on the paper, but in the classroom, in the recess,
It's hard.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then they need a more sport. I sometimes I'm sorry to say that, but sometimes I'm not feeling getting the enough sport.
Yeah.
So are you open to allow parents to come and sit with kids during lunch hour and all, or is it completely out?
It's not completely out the window. I think it is understanding like purpose and then a little bit of capacity issues. So yeah.
And also lunch is issue. I didn't see any lunch bunches is there is yard. He just stayed in the classroom. He just owned by himself in the lunch in the classroom.
Let's connect to keep talking about him. Okay. And yeah. Okay.
Hi, and thank you so much for doing this. I feel like it's so helpful. But if we wanted to volunteer at recess or something, is that something we would just email about? Or I was even thinking like, as a PTA, maybe it would be cool to have like a position, like for someone to like be, I don't know, the social support parent leader, and who could organize like for other parents who want to help, because I would love to help out.
Or to just liaison.
Yeah.
Like, position. We have a
Yes.
session.
We totally do.
Specifically with recess, Julie Trung has been organizing all the parents who volunteer for recess. So our office manager. Yep. And yeah, so either like word of mouth or like speaking with her or emailing with her. So yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So I guess kind of speaking to the same point, it sounds like inclusiveness. What part of the program teach that, and how are we implementing how to include others, like in a situation where, right, there's some kids and they're feeling excluded and they're missing maybe that skill of how to ask to be friends, how to be friends, and teaching the other children of how to include others.
Yep. So I would say actually all the curriculums do that. And when you watch the instruction in classrooms, kids are significantly more effective in the classroom about including others and that verbiage around how do you enter a group, what does it look like the in the second step curriculum, the kids look at pictures and they watch videos and then they practice and they do a lot of role playing, and as we know, everything happens at recess, and so we need lots of rehearsal and practice and reteaching to then apply that skill outside of the classroom, right? So I would say all of the, especially second step with our younger students, but even into ruler, and then also with Camp Kindness, which we're just starting, this week. So yeah, it's the application and the independent application that takes a little bit more time for some. Yes.
Can you share part of that with, like, as a parent, I just want to make sure I'm utilizing the same language to talk through it with my daughter and say, okay, well, ask your friends this, and I'm using like what is taught at school because I think that's way more effective to try
Yes.
to be a team on it.
Yeah, I will see if I can find like specifically. It's a little. Maybe if you just tell me which grade level, then it helps me to look in the curriculum. Yes. Yeah.
I shoot you an email. It's a lot of extra work, but I do wonder about like taking some of the social emotional, because you guys can only do so much at school, right? Like I feel like a lot of the social emotional happens at home, but where parents might be feeling a little bit unsure about how to do that and implement it. And so like even having, whether it be something the PTA does or counselor has to do a new position, but like kind of just translating some of the information for each grade level to what's being covered and what types of conversations you could be having at home to support this.
Yeah.
These are the questions. This is the language.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm jumping back to a question you had. So one thing we could also do is like our social emotional curriculum developers. Randy Peterson is our elementary social emotional curriculum developer, and Wendy Powell is our secondary one. I believe Wendy's coming to an upcoming meeting.
Yeah, so the next PTA general membership meeting, we're hoping to get Wendy Anderson.
Powell, I think.
Powell,
Yeah, it's okay.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
I made it up.
No.
To talk about like building a stronger community, and that definitely includes the SEL component.
Yeah.
I love the idea of having a PTA volunteer that really just focuses on SEL. I think it's awesome. And there's a lot of ways we can use that volunteer. Yeah. And one of the big things that pops to mind is coming up with like just infographics that go home with the parents and talk about this is what we're doing in first grade. Here's some key language points you can use with your kid that echo what's happening in the classroom.
Yeah, Maggie has some swag. Sorry, not to preclude. Yes, Maggie, but it has me thinking about, because about 8 years ago when we launched like Randy and Wendy, try saying that fast, would do like parent nights at communities. And so one of the things that they do in rural curriculum is create a classroom charter. So like running families through creating a family charter, so stuff like that. So that's another, yeah. Okay.
One more thing. That meeting is on May 10th at 7 p.m. at the school. If you want to come.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
thank you
No,
for
you're
a
on.
great explanation. I'd like to piggyback on a couple things. I don't think it was mentioned, but I teach a lot of guidance lessons in the classroom that either supplement, or a teacher will come to me and say, Maggie, we're having a lot of friendship problems at recess. Can you do a friendship lesson? That's always one that I do sort of regularly. Anger.
Test anxiety.
Yeah. Anything like that is peppered into all the grades K through 5. And so like right now, 3 through 5, I'm going to be doing the Anti-Test Anxiety Society lesson. But I've been doing friendship lessons in the lower grades. I'm trying to remember all your points. They were so great. But I do want to say that as a person who's worked in other districts, I used to be a secondary counselor. We are very lucky to have the SEL that we have in this district. There's districts, and I'm not talking about some district that has 5,000 people. They don't even have elementary counselors still in a lot of the schools. I mean, it's only been 5 years that I've been able to be in one school and not split. So I just want to say Bellevue really puts a lot of resources into SEL. We're always being trained on new things coming down the pike. Randy Peterson is amazing. They're all evidence-based curriculums, and you know, we're just really lucky. And so I kind of like am one of the heads of the elementary counselors, and we have people in all the different schools. All the schools are different communities, right? And we're all trying to serve our communities in the best way possible for our needs. So this has been really different for me being at this school, and I've really enjoyed partnering with my principals and the staff to give your child, you know, what they need. We have a lot of social groups going. We have a lot of in-classroom guidance lessons. I see kids. Your child's not going to see me for 50 minutes once a week, but I do these 3-session things with some of your children where I see them 15, 20 minutes once a week for 3 weeks, and then we talk again. What are we going to talk about? What am I going to recommend? What resources? There's been a lot of referrals to counseling this year because counselors now have space, which they didn't. It was heartbreaking last year. And, you know, I think everybody in the world should go to counseling, you know. You know, I don't think that it should have the connotation of being less than or something like that. This idea of our kids getting their emotions and feelings out is like you said. I mean, I have Kingle saying it. Yes, math. Yes, everything else. But we don't want them, like, I'm older than all of you, right? And no one talked about anything in my day. And, you know, I'm lucky to have come out from the 70s. That's all I'll say. But anyway. What does it look like? So we use all these different, whether it's colors or words or role playing or just discussions and chats, you know, anything to get it out. It's okay that you feel that. So, and that, like I just thought. But I love this book. They're quite best self. I don't know. What does that mean to be your best self? Tell me. Well, I guess it means that I listen or I have fun at school. Yeah. Yeah. You can be your best self 24 hours a day? No. Is that okay? Yes. But our goal is to be in that green. Oh, shoot. I forgot my little Kelso posters. I have many little Kelso posters for you. I'm sure a lot of you in the younger grades have heard the 9 Kelsos. And I always, when I email you and we're talking about things, I'll attach one to put on the refrigerator. But I have some laminated ones to give you. And I also have some little mini mood meters you can keep at home. It's just great for check-ins and for when they can't find their words. And you're that way too. We can't find it. You know, Mom, I need to go. I'm in the red right now. I need to go take a breathing. We do a lot of breathing. Okay? A lot of breathing. that wasn't in the beginning of my career because they wanted to align it with some sort of mindfulness that the country wasn't ready for or whatever, but it's just breathing. And we do a lot of inhale, make your belly big, hold it, exhale. We do a lot of, let's see, like the snakes. Or we do blow the candle up. And I always close my eyes, and I love that. Why does someone make you close your eyes? Because you don't want to be distracted. Yes, that's why. And so a lot of breathing, and then we do corazon at the end all the time. We do a big one, a little one, a smaller one. I made this up here. And then we go. And we spread it around the world. I know, I love it. So I will run down and bring you some mood meters and some kelsos. And the best for me is email. I have, one of these names like this, but it's Halila M. And I love to talk to you on email. Phone is a little bit difficult. I think about 2/3 of the time the phone in my office doesn't ring for some reason. I don't know. Yes.
I think one thing that's unique to Cuesta is we are demanding a lot of our students cognitively with the language, especially in the younger grades. So we've talked a lot today about students being ready to learn by making sure that their needs, emotions are taken care of. How do we address when they're cognitively taxed that then it's cycling back and affecting their emotional capacity?
That's a good
and
question.
making sure that they're supported both ways.
I think it goes back to that, like being a little bit of self-awareness and how do we build that skill, which, let's be real, our adults working on self-awareness too, right? So recognizing when you're getting cognitively taxed, right? And then what are the strategies we do? Which the most common strategy is take a break and do some breathing, right? And we want to make take a break not a negative thing, right? There is a perception just when I walk in the room that somebody's in trouble. That's not the case 95% of the time. I'll give myself a little bit of grace. And that the phrase of like, let's take a break isn't a bad thing, right? I do it as an adult, right? When I'm frustrated, and so I think it's continuing to build that self-awareness and also building community-wide that understanding that it is very cognitively demanding. I mean, up until a few years ago, if students qualified for domain-specific services, the plan was, oh, you're in a bilingual program, check. So there was no domain-specific service, so advanced learning services, sorry, because it was understood that learning in 2 languages is so cognitively demanding that you don't need to get extra push, right, or additional push. And I'm not saying we're not providing services, we do, but I think recognizing as a community that, yes, maybe when they get done with school, it is, snack time, and then I'm going to read to you tonight. That's your reading, right?
And then on the other side of that, I have a lot of conversations with teachers about, I get a lot of math anxiety in my office, right? And I can really understand that because I had that in school. And it's like, if you're asking 5 problems and your child is just like not there, could you please ask for 3 problems and make it homework? And I've gotten a lot of mileage out of that. I'm not saying we're always going to have 3 out of the 5 or whatever, but just taking that load down a little bit, making it more manageable and more positive. Like, I know it kind of sounds corny, but we get a lot of mileage out of positivity.
Yeah. I have a quick question now that you mentioned homework. Is the policy for the school not to give out homework?
So our school policy on homework is daily reading every day.
Oh, okay, so your school does have it.
Yeah.
I know some other elementary schools like strictly no homework.
I would say almost all elementaries, the policy is daily reading. So at the elementary level, that's what research shows supports kids, whether they're reading to themselves or reading to others or somebody's reading to them, doesn't matter what language. It's also why we have different adapted computer learning programs regarding reading, like Lexia or Imagine Espanol.
So do you keep track of their scores on the iPad issue?
To some degree, but we also have families who are like, I don't want screen time, I'm going to read to them, right? So, yeah. And then there are, I would say, like different preferences or personalities if they want to do some sort of reading log or not a reading log, you know. I find reading logs tedious. I know I did the reading, I know my child did the reading, we're going to call it good. You know, yeah, so there is a little bit of difference, but I know that there is a concern around, two concerns around homework. One is homework has been historically been a lens for families to get a lens into what's happening at school. And the research, I'm not talking specific to Puesta, okay, but research nationally is often homework was not connected to what was happening in the classroom. And it was busy work, okay, so like time filler, right? And so how do we meet the need of informing families about what's happening in school in a way that's manageable for everybody, manageable for the family, manageable for the teacher, you know? And that's something, I'll be honest, I don't think we've figured that out quite enough. And then the pandemic sort of exacerbates our need to want to know what's happening in our kids' classroom, and are they okay, and are they on track, do they need to know, right? There's this, I'm not going to use the word panic, I'm going to use the word urgency. You know? And so I think as a community, figuring out how are we going to meet that need without overtaxing, you know, anybody. The other concern around homework is that it's building study skills, right? So when they get to middle school where they have 7 classes to negotiate and different homework assignments, and when they get to high school, and when they get to college, right? Quite a bit of the research talked about that even for kids who did 0 homework, 0 reading, nothing in elementary school, they can still develop healthy study habits. And even for kids who did a lot of homework and a lot of work, and they get to middle school and they still develop unhealthy study habits. So there wasn't quite a causal link between homework or not homework in elementary and study skills in middle or in secondary. So in our district, a lot of our middle schools have adopted AVID, or having AVID classes, which AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. And it's like teaching study skills. So, and they found that to be more effective at teaching study skills than this having homework or not homework in elementary school. So, yes.
I promise this is my last question.
It's all good.
I love that there's a lot of supports being embedded now in the schools, similar to you, to meet the needs because there's such a higher demand. And I feel really out of touch also. I'm just curious, what does the district support look like in terms of alternative programming too, when needs might be above and beyond what a school can meet? What does that look like on the elementary level in Bellevue?
Oh, that's a really great question. I would say that if it's above and beyond what we feel we have capacity here at school, we're talking pretty deep into special education, right? And so there are a couple special education programs that are what we'd call a more restrictive environment, meaning they're not spending most of their day in a general education classroom. It's more of a specialized classroom where there's more adults and fewer students. And we have at the elementary level currently 3 different programs, kind of meeting various. They're all a little bit different. So I would say like that's the next level after the general education. Yeah. I'm really sorry, I do have to run, but thank you so much for spending so much time here. The book parade, and May 10th. Don't forget May 10th. PTA here. Do we know? Is it this room or?
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
It'll be somewhere
here.
It'll be
And I'll
here.
put signs up downstairs so you know.
Yes, and come check out Maggie's bin of goodies, and I think she came back with more of Kelso's choices and mood meters.
Oh.
Happy Friday! Enjoy the sunshine.
Help yourself. I like this thing about reading. I printed it once. Have you seen this one? You should read it. It's really cool. Why can't I skip my 20 minutes tonight? And it's how many words the kids get when they do 20 minutes.